Hello everybody, my name is Delme Haney and I volunteered at a preschool with 15 students ages 3 to 5. It was located in the Palmdale School District in Palmdale, California. After visiting a local library, I read 50 books at random and here are the results. So on this slide we are going to talk about gender. If you look at the chart, you can see that out of 50 books, 27 included female characters, 24 included male characters, one book included a non-binary character, and 22 books included a non-human character. Then, out of those 50 books, 17 had a female main character, 23 had a male as the main character, one had the main character non-binary, and 20 books had non-humans as the main character. As you can see, having a male as the main character was more than any other gender. In my classroom, I have a good ratio of boys to girls. There's 7 girls and 8 boys in my classroom. And my class currently doesn't have any students who consider themselves non-binary. So on this slide, I put examples of books with different gender as main characters. So Church for All was one of the only books that had members of the LGBTQ community as the central or main character of the book. Then we have Danby, where the main character was a girl. Then we have Melvin the Mouth, where the main character was a boy. And finally, The Little Engine That Could, where the main character was a train or non-human. On this slide, we're going to talk about race. So, if we look at the first chart, out of 50 books, 27% of the books included characters who are non-human, 25% are white, 18% are black or African American, 11% are Asian or Asian American, 10% are Latino or Latina, 5% are Arab or Arab American, and 4% are Native or Indigenous. If you look at the middle chart, pie graph, as the main character, 45% of the books had main characters who were non-human, which is like almost 50% of the books that I've read. 23% are white, 10% are black or African American, 8% are Asian or Asian American, another 8% are Middle Eastern, Arab or Arab American, 4% Latino, Latina, and 2% are Native or Indigenous. So as you can see, besides non-human characters, having a white main character almost doubles or triples over the other races. So I'm glad at least all my students had at least one book where the main character was their own race and they can see themselves as the lead. On this slide, we have examples of books my library had where the main characters represented students in my class. So Pacho Nacho has the main character as a Latino boy. Then the next book, The Grand Master's Daughter, the main character is an Asian American girl. Then we have A Walk in the Woods, where the main character is white. And finally, we have a book called Calling Dr. Zaza, where the main character is African American. On this slide, we're going to talk about language. So out of 50 books, 7 of them included languages other than English. I was actually surprised that it had that many books at all. So my class has 6 students who speak other languages. 4 of them speak Spanish and 1 can speak Chinese. Unfortunately, there was only one book that included Spanish and one that included somewhat Chinese in the book. I think the library should have more options for my bilingual students. On this slide, I have an example of a book that I think my library should include. This book is called The Great Race by Ling and Eric Lee. So I like this book because it has the whole book written in English and in Chinese. So if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see, the bottom is English and the top is Chinese. You can see how it's written and how it's supposed to be pronounced. On this slide, we're going to talk about religion. In my class, I only know of one student who is a Christian, and I'm not sure the other students or what they practice. So even if my students are not religious, I think it's important for them to learn about the different religions around the world and learn to respect them. My library only had 3 out of 50 books that featured characters participating in religious practices, and all of them so happened to be about Ramadan. So on this slide, I have a couple different book recommendations to add to my library where students can learn about different religions and learn to respect them. The first book is called My Religion, Your Religion by Lisa Bullard. I like this book because it's about 2 boys, one who's a Christian and one who's Jewish, and on their journey as becoming good friends, they discover learning about each other's religion is fun. They are also able to see the similarities and the differences between both their religions. And then the book on the right, it's called Hats of Faith by Medea Cohen. And I like this book because it goes over religious head coverings and shows students the different types and who wears them. And this is a great way for my students to understand why some people wear head coverings due to their religion. And I feel like a lot of students, they like to point out when people are wearing things that they don't usually wear. So that's why I like this book. On this slide, we're going to discuss family structure. So out of 50 books, my library only had 1 book that had a family structure other than 2 parents and 2 children. Then the book also was a non-human characters as well. So on the left, you can see the book. It's called I Love You Too by Michael Furman, which is about a father bear and his son. In my class, I have 2 students who have different kinds of family structure. So I wish that there were more books in my class that shared about other families like single parents or even having a big family, just something other than the 2 parent and 2 children. So on the right is a book I found called Where's My Dad by Amber Ivy. And I like this book because it goes over the different feelings and emotions children have when they only have 1 parent. And I think this book would be great in my class as a mirror to my students with single parent and a window for my other students to know what it would be like. On this slide, we're going to talk about sexual orientation. So out of 50 books, only 2 books included characters from the LGBTQ community. I was actually surprised they had any at all. So I was surprised they had these 2, especially the book on the right. The book on the right is called When Aiden Becomes a Brother. And it really surprised me because it's about a girl, or Aiden, who felt he was different from the other girls and felt like becoming a boy was what he was meant to be in the beginning. And I really like it because the parents in the book were very accepting of his decision and they made him feel comfortable with how he wanted to be. So I think it's good for children to see that that some students go through different things and they change and may be transgender, and it's okay, to have. And then they can also see that their parents are accepting of it, so they don't have to feel afraid of wanting to be themselves. On this slide, we're going to talk about books that include characters with disabilities. So, out of 50 books, only 3 books included characters with disabilities, and none were the main characters. I do have one student who has a disability and needs a wheelchair to get around. I think it would be nice to see at least one book with the main character having a disability. So on the left are the books in my library that have characters with disabilities in them. And there's even a page from A Church for All that shows somebody in a wheelchair. And then on the right is a book that I think would be a good addition to my library. It's called Some Kids Use Wheelchairs by Lola Schaefer. And I like this book because it teaches diversity and tolerance to children, and it has many different pictures of children in wheelchairs and that still participate in everyday activities. So children know that just because you have a disability doesn't mean you're missing out on life or you're just like completely different. Okay, so for the final slide, how does my classroom do as a mirror for my students? So as a mirror for my students, I think my library needs more books that reflect the students in my classrooms and their personal lives. When children see themselves represented in a book, it makes them proud of themselves and it helps them develop a sense of identity. So I definitely think we need to get more books that target our specific students that we have now and adjust as needed. And how does my classroom library do as a window for my students? As a window for my students, I think my library does a better job of having my students see into the other lives of people. For example, even though we do not have any students who celebrate Ramadan, reading those books about Ramadan to my students helps them be able to see into the lives of others and have a better understanding of them and their culture. So that concludes my presentation in my library audit, and thank you for listening.